Good evening, class. Hope everybody's doing good tonight, and I hope you are doing okay with the line inventory assignment. In the event that you're having issues, please get in contact with me. There are a couple things that I can do to help you out if you are having issues with it. Please remember too that quality does count. Make sure you're inking strong and that your lines are strong. Okay, let's take a look here at the home page. There's a couple things I want to go over before I get started on tonight's lecture. First of all, let's go take a look at, we're going to go to the course home, and actually we are at the course home. This is from last week's or last Tuesday's class. If you need to follow up on anything, you can check that out. You can see it is about 40 minutes long. I am on a time limit with this screencast. I only have 15 minutes, but really I don't think it's going to take any longer than 15 minutes. If it does, I'll either duplicate or I'll go over the other stuff tonight. All right, let's go and take a look at the calendar. I did not go over this very much last time, but this is a good source, or good resource, I should say. If you look at tonight's class, we have two things that are here: line inventory due and line inventory template. Now, the line inventory, I actually told you guys on Tuesday that it would be a good idea to have two of them done. I'm going to actually change this date and make it the 8th. So those 4 drawings need to be done by Tuesday. If you got them done tonight, that's great. I just hope you didn't rush them too much. I do recall telling you guys that it would not be ready, would not be due till Tuesday the 8th. And then I'm going to give you also another assignment tonight, and this is the reason why I wanted you guys to try to get at least 2 drawings done for tonight's classes, because next Tuesday you have another assignment coming up, which I'm going to give to you tonight. I want to give it to you tonight because that way you have a few days to work on this, and if you have the line inventory out of the way, you can get started on the character of line. Also, you have the due dates for your syllabus quiz. That actually is the end date for that. Using the credit line, which I'll talk to you a little bit about tonight, and then actually, I'm sorry, I'll talk to you about that on Tuesday, and then non-objective cross contour. Also, you have a line vocabulary due the 17th, and I'm going to talk to you about that tonight if I have time. Okay? All right, so actually, let's go to that right now, the line vocabulary, and it's in the content section under line. And there it is. You want to download this, and the instructions are right there. You can either use the Word document or PDF. And what I want you to do is use examples of each term, and you can hand draw these or you can download them. And the reason why I have students, you can actually do a Google search. What is a give me an example of a diagonal line. If you Google search it and it gives you an example, you can paste it in there. Okay. Let me show you an example of what a finished visual vocabulary looks like. This is from one of my students last semester. This is actually a color vocabulary, and here are the vocabulary terms on the left-hand side, and this is the part that you need to fill in. And he typed in the correct definitions, and then this is visual. I call it visual vocabulary. These are examples of each one of the terms. Okay, so hopefully that won't cause too much confusion. You can refer to this video if you need to. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with tonight's lecture. The first part is, if you remember, I said we sometimes move around in the textbook. That way we can take little chunks of each. The chapter 1, the design process, thinking, looking, doing. We covered thinking. Tonight we're going to cover looking, and then towards the end, we're also going to cover unity. Okay, so that'll be coming up here in just a minute. All right, so like I said, let's go ahead and get started. Design process. Looking. Here are some sources for using as reference for looking. Nature, natural world, animals, human artifacts, events, history and culture, a lot of things that you look at that become sources. And a source versus subject, what a source is, it's the stimulus for the image or the idea, and that is often found in nature. So your source would be nature. The subject is the content of the work or the way the artist saw the object. Okay, so that comes down to interpretation. So once you have your source, you can actually do some things with it, interpret it the way you want. That is your subject. Okay. Here are some examples right here. This is actually from your text. The right-hand side is from your text. The left-hand side, I downloaded just so you guys could get a pretty good understanding. These are lamp designs, and they're generated by an organic process of growth. Okay. The source, the stimulus for the image or the object, and then the subject is the content of the work and the way in which the artist saw it. Okay, another way of looking is through history and culture. Doing formal research into new or unfamiliar subjects allows us to find elements that shape our own visual language. The Impressionist, and I believe, yes, the Impressionist, not only the Impressionist, it started with the Impressionist, but Picasso and the Cubist also used art from Africa. They visited Africa quite a bit, and they were inspired by what they saw there. And so when you see some Cubist painting, they're often influenced by what they saw, what they were looking at in Africa. And the same thing happened with the Impressionists. If you're familiar with the work of Marie Cassatt, she was actually, her source was Japanese prints. Okay. Common instructions in art. Look again and see the relationships. And again, this is just kind of to recap. The process of looking includes observing both nature and human artifacts. And guys, I mentioned this before, but anytime you see anything in yellow, there's a good possibility it will be on a quiz or exam. Vernacular. An image becomes commonly known through frequent reproduction. And how might an artist play on this concept? In contrast to the fine art examples, these images come from commercial art world and reveals how this icon was visualized at different times. And this one here is a good example. We're looking at Betty Crocker through the ages, and this was definitely influenced by fashion at the time. This reflects where the illustrator looked for visual model of the American female. Okay, for the design process, the next reading that you'll need to do are on pages 20 through 25. The principles of design, unity. Let's take a look at, we're picking it up where we left off from last class. Another way to achieve unity is through continuation. And continuation is basically where our line or where our eye is going to be led through line. I mentioned this last time about the use of the principles of design in photography. Oftentimes when a photographer is using line, it's to lead the eye. The design carries the eye of the viewer through and around the picture. And the example is right here. The edge of the sleeping girl's head and her outstretched arm connect the curving line of the sofa, creating a continuity. Continuity or continuation is often used in car design. You can see this in this example of the BMW. The sweeping line of the car's window can lead to the curve of the hood. Also, you have this curved line right here that will actually lead you to the wheel and the wheel well. And you have the leading lines, these diagonal lines that are also create movement. And that's what we're talking about here. The curved line of the windshield continues at a downward angle. Look at this line right here. Here's a continuation. That's an example of a continuation. This leading line here also connects the fender to the headlight and a crease leading into the door handle. Right in here. And that's just a recap on continuation. Serial design, the best way I can describe this is the use of the grid, and we'll take a look at this in just a minute. Example would be books, catalogs, magazines, And mostly and most common for us is the websites, which I'll get to here in a minute. In design, the grid is most often used as an aid in serial designs. And its artist's job is not only to unify a single design, but to create several designs that somehow relate to one another. And this can be part of a series. And here's an example of a grid. Now, a grid like this can be rather boring, but a good designer will incorporate. Now I want you to take a look right here. This is actually part of the grid. If we come back here, this grid was connected. Okay. Now, just because you're using a grid doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be successful. It needs to be refreshing. There needs to be a little bit of variety in it. If everything is just set up into a grid, as I mentioned before, it can be kind of boring. All right. Also, you want to think about repetition. In this design, they used repetition a number of times within the grid, and that is another way to unify the design. Rauschenberg used this in his lithograph. It provides unity of the collage. The various historical art images, they kind of compete for one another, which creates a little bit of variety, and the grid creates the unity. Okay, and that is that. So I tell you where I'm at, guys. I'm at 11:30 as far as my time, so I do not believe I can get to line in 4 minutes. So what I'm going to do is stop this, and I'll put this into the lecture on Unity in the My Learning section. Okay, so you want to be looking for that, and let's move on to line.